Trigger warning. This podcast contains descriptions of various abusive situations. Listener discretion is advised. You are listening to the Preacher Boys Podcast, a podcast shedding light on decades of mental, physical, and sexual abuse within the independent fundamental Baptist movement. The testimonies shared on this podcast are told from the personal experience and perspective of the survivors. Not all legal outcomes are known or final. Any suspect is presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. To find more information about the Preacher Boys podcast and upcoming documentary, visit preacherboysdoc.com or connect on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter with the handle @preacherboysdoc. Now, here is your host, Eric Skwarczynski.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Preacher Boys Podcast. I'm so excited to have two returning guests today. I have Amanda from Exposing Circle of Hope. She's been on two or three times now. And then Miranda, who you guys just heard on a recent episode, kind of share about the Troubled podcast or Talk Troubled on social media. You've probably seen their content out there if you've been following the troubled teen industry. But I brought both on because they're both a part of a mental health rally that's going to be happening in Missouri. Amanda, can you share a little bit about that and kind of what the goal is of this rally in Missouri?
Yeah, November 14th and the 15th, we are having our ICU Survivor Rally. What was the actual name of it, Miranda? What did we actually land on? I forgot.
We're calling it Right to Rights Rally, and this is our Missouri 2020 event.
Yes, Rights to Rights Rally. And it's going to be held at the Stockton City Park in Stockton, Missouri on November 14th. And we are going to have speakers there. We're hoping to have mental health activists there as well and other people of the community. Our goal is to bring awareness to the troubled teen industry that is happening in that town, Cedar County, Missouri, because there are two schools still currently opened and operating, Agape and Wings of Faith. And as most people probably know, Agape is the school my dad took their practices of and opened up Circle of Hope. So our goal is to basically bring awareness to these two schools that are still open and operating in that community.
So the other one that you mentioned was Wings of Faith?
Yes, that's the girl. Agape, I think it was in 2004, took on a girls' school, and it was known as Refuge when I was there, but they changed their name to Wings of Faith. I don't remember what years, but it wasn't too long ago that they changed their name to Wings of Faith.
So it's adjacent to Agape then. It's the same group behind it.
Yep.
And how long have they been operating, you said?
Agape's been operating since 1990. Wings of Faith opened, I think it was in 2004 when they came to Missouri, but they were in, I think, Tennessee and Michigan before that. I don't know much about their past history because they came like out of nowhere. But if I remember correctly, they started in like Tennessee.
Right. So like every troubled teen home, they've moved around quite a bit. Right. And then Miranda, how'd you get involved with this? I know you told me a little bit off mic, you and Amanda have built a pretty strong relationship, but how'd you get involved with, helping coordinate this event?
Our missions and our organizations are deeply entwined. I mean, we work together on pretty much every element of our advocacy, and I'm on the board, with the Circle of Hope organization, or Exposing Circle of Hope, but we didn't expect to close them that fast, so that's got to change, right?
Right. And then you said where it had broken up, you had said in March you had started working together, right?
Yeah. So after the video, which I'm assuming, after you had Amanda on your podcast, most of your listeners have already seen the video that was leaked from within Circle of Hope back in March. And so that's when Amanda and I started working together. She came on the podcast. And since then, we've just been, pretty much just doing everything, same horse, same cart. We're a lot stronger together.
And have the two of you noticed, so like obviously, and Amanda, I had you on to talk about this, but I mean, obviously Paris Hilton's documentary kind of pushed us into the public, spotlight a little bit and got the conversation moving as far as people who weren't part of this world and who are outsiders. Have you guys noticed an influx of interest in what you guys are talking about since that? Has it been kind of the same, or has it opened any doors as far as moving the conversation forward?
Not for the Circle of Hope part of it, because we got our NBC article opened the doors for us personally. But I have seen more survivors come forward and feel more comfortable coming forward with it. And so in that sense, I do feel like it opened a lot of doors. So.
What about you, Miranda? Have you seen any kind of change in the conversation or the ability to talk about it?
I've seen a different group of, and I'm going to guess they're mostly parents, that value the venues and platforms that the stories are being had on. When she went on Drew Barrymore's show, my sister hit me up, right? She saw that. And, other people are like, wow, let's actually have a conversation about this. I am concerned that the media has focused pretty much 100% since the Paris story coming out on private placement, especially from within the upper echelon of our classist society. And I just want to clarify, abuse is abuse. So it really doesn't matter if your trust fund has $1 billion in it. We don't abuse children. But that's been the sole conversation. We've had other celebrities, Paris Jackson and Kat Von D, come out as well from Provo. And you can expect that across the board, right? But we would also like to have the conversation of, foster kids and JV justice kids and all of the human trafficking and the adoption, abdication of responsibilities. And, Paris can only do what Paris does. And I think that her being able to put it on a wider platform and on more Dateline-y or, that kind of media, I think that's very helpful, but it is still up to us to move the conversation forward and in those directions. And we definitely can't just rest on celebrity cameos to do that.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I have to imagine, while there is a bright spotlight, like you said, it's going to be more specifically, and this is no fault of her or the documentary, but her experience happened to be Provo. She's got a huge platform already. So the eyeballs are on Provo specifically and her specifically. But that's where this was kind of the cool thing, walking away from the whole protest in Provo, is I was talking to Paris felt the same as talking to, say, you or to Amanda, in the sense of everybody has their niche of this that they can address it from. Amanda has it from being a staff kid in addressing it. You've got it from, your angle and with the Troubled podcast and all that, the different people you're speaking with. But yeah, it's always a mix, right? There's a lot of attention, but it's trying to get people to not be hyper focused on one place. And I see that with my show. People get so focused on the mega church, quote unquote, mega churches in the movement, but they lose sight of the fact that there's people in churches with 30 people who are being abused in the exact same way and shifted around the exact same way. So you have to keep the conversation going. So Circle of Hope closing was kind of a big shocker, I think. It was going to happen at some point. There's only so long you can keep running. But what's kind of Agape being the next target? Was that solely because you had the personal connection? Did it seem like a natural progression, or does that just seem like the next big domino that needs to fall in this kind of world?
Personally, for me, it was always going to be the next, because that's just where I was at and I know it. But it's personal for me because just this year alone, we've lost 5 friends due to suicide. One of them in their suicide note mentioned that he could no longer take it due to the trauma that happened at boarding school. And so just for me, that was just this year alone. So for me, it's more of our friends are dying, and the abuse that happened to them is still going on to this day. So Agape was always going to be the next one, but it's not going to be the last.
Right.
If that makes sense. So.
Right. Yeah, you're tackling the industry as a whole, but you almost have to have that hyper focus to see the change one by one. if you go too broad, it's easy to just say, well, I'm not one of the ones they're talking about, So have you, obviously you guys have been promoting this. Have you heard anything, any wrestling from Agape or any kind of response from them knowing that this is coming? Because Provo, I know, was like kind of a shock and awe type thing where they didn't know till the day of or whatever it was. But you guys are obviously promoting this. I know that Agape is obviously aware of you guys. Have you heard anything from them, or has it just been dead silent?
No, actually back in July, because we were planning this for Circle of Hope girls like back in May, and it was only going to be a Circle of Hope thing because at that point we didn't even have the sheriffs helping, but word got back to Agape somehow, and so it turned into like Agape saying that we were going to do this huge big protest, and so they hyped up their security. They got extra deputies there walking the property. And so that's basically the only thing I've heard back from Agape is that they've hyped up their security because of this.
Well, the sheriff in Stockton, I believe, he's a former staff member from Agape, right? So
yeah.
They're pretty connected to the law enforcement in that area.
Yeah, he's actually, Robert Graves is the founder of Agape's son-in-law. So he married the daughter, Samantha Clemenson. He married Samantha Clemenson, and he worked at Agape while we were there, actually.
Right.
And he's still, from my understanding, he's still a staff member at Agape, but also a deputy in the sheriff's department. But there's also another staff member. His name's Julio Sandoval, and he's also a deputy within the sheriff's department as well. So they do have people within the sheriff's department there.
So there's definitely no conflict of interest when there's a call made checking in on the welfare of kids that are at Agape.
Oh, yeah. It's very interesting, to be honest.
Yeah. So I know it's a mental health rally. You made clear, like when you were messaging me, like it's not really a protest. And, in some way, obviously in some ways it is. It's a protest of what's happening there. But, you mentioned like there's a shockingly high suicide rate among people who've been in programs like this. That's something I've seen from just talking to people is like how many people know somebody whose mental health was destroyed by being in places like this. So how is this event going to be a little bit different with addressing just specifically like the mental health side and not so much just, doing a generic protest,
Miranda?
Sure. Yeah. So I, per the point of the disproportionate suicide rates from being haunted for life by the kinds of traumas that were reinforced, encouraged, and validated as children, every breath these guys take is a protest. So like just point blank, literally every breath these guys take is a protest. And when my school made the New York Times cover a couple years ago, the article was called "It's Like Who's Next? An Alarming Death Rate at a Troubled Teen Boarding School in New York," right? So this is pretty regular. One of my friends from my program, half the kids that were in her family are already dead, and it's only been 14 years. So they're definitely going to get most of that family by the time that's over. So, I mean, every time that we show up and we speak, it's a protest, but we do know, like per your point, we know that we're going into a very conflicted, potentially dangerous territory. I've made it a point to let the sheriff know exactly what we're doing, exactly where we're going to be walking near Agape, exactly like the plan. I also do expect that it's possible that we will get arrested, even though we'll be recording everything and we'll be following all the rules and we'll be incredibly respectful. But what we're trying to do with the community, which is necessary in order to rid this rot of these areas in Missouri, is to get like the local community to join us and agree. This is that conversation that we had, Eric, about good Christians standing up against people who are using Christ to hurt people, and justify it and validate it and protect it in that way. So we're really hoping that we can engage with and connect with the community. We're going to be around in Missouri for a really long time. Amanda, the girls, and the guys are working with state legislators starting that month to look at repealing this religious exemption and to look at all these claims against Agape and Circle of Hope that, and decide what needs to be addressed immediately. So we're focusing on the mental health. We really want people to understand that they're being unfortunately used to be complicit in this level of child abuse. The whole community is. And we're hoping that by informing them of what's going on, connecting them with resources, and supporting them as they make the changes necessary in their own communities, that we can really try to test out this paradigm of survivors working with local communities to make local change. Because at this point, we really do kind of have to go county by county, state by state, to make places safe for kids, because that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. What is the local attitude toward Agape? And I'm actually surprised I don't think I've ever asked this question to anybody I've talked to from there, but is it something where it's kind of just like nobody really knows what happens there in the local community? Is the local community actively supporting Agape? What's kind of the makeup of the surrounding area, and how hard is it going to be to shift the paradigm there of how people view it?
Well, when I was there, I actually worked at a restaurant called Bongo's Bistro, and there were multiple people that were people that went and ate there that would talk about how weird that place was. The owner of that restaurant knew I wasn't allowed to wear pants, the whole IFB dress code thing, but they would let me wear pants, but they would keep an eye out for my parents. So I think it was always like, when I was there, they always felt like it was a cult. But when I left, Agape started getting more community based. So they just had a rodeo that was sponsored by, I don't know if it was a PBR, or they were sponsored by a national rodeo out at Agape. And so I do know that the community, there are people in the community that see it as a good place, but there are also people in the community that see it as weird, because Agape guys are constantly running away. And someone did a podcast with an Agape student, and they're like, oh, this is why they're always running away. And so I feel like it's a mixture. I feel like a lot of people didn't know what really was going on there until we started speaking out. I think once they do find out what was happening and is still happening, I think we will have the community support. I don't think they are for what goes on there.
And is that the reason you guys are meeting? I mean, obviously there's private property and things, but is that the reason you're meeting more in a public? Because I know Agape is like 13 miles away from pretty much anything else, right? Or it's pretty separated from the rest of the community.
Agape was 13 miles from my parents' school. It's not that far from Stockton, like the town of Stockton. It's like maybe a 4 or 5 minute drive. It feels like it's forever. That we are meeting in the park to basically get the community support, to make it more community involved. So it's also a small town, so there's not really many places to meet.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. So you mentioned bringing some people in to speak and things like that. Who do you have lined up? And then what's kind of the plan for the day? I know you probably don't want to share like every step right now, but what's kind of the basic plan for the 2 days you guys will be there?
Well, we do have people that are coming to speak. Some of them are going to be former staff members, and some of them are former students. Some of them are kids that recently left, and one of them I'm trying to get to talk that he went to Agape when it was in Othello, Washington.
Wow.
We're also going to have the Cedar County Republican, the editor of Cedar County Republican. He's going to speak on his investigation on what went on with Circle of Hope and what he's doing currently now. Right now, we don't really have a set agenda. We're still like getting the times and everything done. But on Sunday, we're going to have a silent vigil walk around Agape on the public roads. Our plan is to make crosses for all of our fallen brothers and walk with them as well. I personally want to leave them there. So we'll see.
No.
We'll see how long they last. Yeah, but we'll solidify the details on who will be in person. But so for Saturday, which is the public rally that's going to be in Stockton that Amanda was mentioning, we're also going to make sure that we have a virtual event. Both Saturday and Sunday will be live streamed completely. But Saturday, we're talking to a lot of survivors, advocates, a couple legislators, and people that have been incredibly proactive and supportive about helping to have like a really cool interactive Zoom. We've got a bunch of healers that are survivors and allies, people that do like EFT and yoga and whatnot. And so right now we're trying to figure out who can actually make it to Missouri, and then who is going to be staying where they are and being virtual. And it's really fun because like Liz Ionelli, of course, founder of the ICU Survivor Campaign, she's from my program, traumatologist, psychotherapist. She leads our mental health mafia. That was the reason for starting the nonprofit, to provide mental health because of the extreme losses from Agape.
Mhm.
She's getting, what I almost called it deported. She's getting deployed because she does frontline COVID support for like doctors in major COVID, locations. So she's literally getting deployed this week. So we'll get all of who's going to be virtual and who's going to be live for Saturday released within the next week. But per Amanda's point about the vigil, like I'm super stoked about that. I think that's incredibly important. We have family members of some of our brothers that have died this year that are going to be coming to Missouri to speak and also to lead that vigil and to make sure that it's done completely respectfully. I mean, we really, like, if anybody is a mental health provider or a healer or something wants to come hang with us in Missouri, we will definitely need support. But, and then also the original reason for doing this was before Circle of Hope was closed. So the reason everyone was meeting in Missouri was they needed to file all of their jazz with the local sheriffs, meet with some of the lawyers that they're working with, and also with the legislators to repeal the religious exemption. But, the Circle of Hope closed a lot faster than anyone would have guessed. So it's kind of morphed into what's needed right now. But we do want all survivors and allies to know that everything will be 100% virtually accessible. And actually, I think what's going to be happening Saturday will be a lot more fun. So we're going to enjoy peeping in with the recording, and everything will be live streamed. So it'll be totally accessible.
Yeah, no, I'm super bummed that I wasn't able to make it out, because that's definitely something where I knew there was going to be something in the future, and I was hoping it would work. But I'm glad I'll be able to watch it and, be a part virtually. Is this the first of many of these things that you guys want to do? Is it something you want to do at other homes? Or is it ones you're going to keep doing at Agape until something happens? Like, what's kind of the plan moving forward there?
Yeah, no, we do plan on doing more. We currently know of at least 5 boarding schools that actually spawned out of Agape. And so we do want to go back to Jefferson City sometime next year and just rally together, basically protest the troubled teen industry in Missouri, because I know of, like I said, 5 that spawned out of Agape, but off the top of my head, I know of 10 other ones that are in Missouri. Right. That is not the only place. I do know that. I know Florida is another big place. Mississippi, I think, was another one. I do know that this is just the first of many.
Right. So for people like myself who can't be there and can't physically, support with being present, what are some ways people can get the word out, support what you guys are doing, and just ensure that this is a successful event?
Sure. I'm learning to make a website, which the really horrific beta version should be out tonight or tomorrow. So our domain is www.talktrouble.org. And so we have a whole event page. It'll get more interactive as we lock in specific time slots, but it has everything you guys need. There's also a GoFundMe to support the expenses. There are a lot of survivors and things that we are trying to provide for them, like travel fare, and we're getting Airbnb for everybody and whatnot. So if people can donate, great, but just definitely invite all your friends. And also if people like you especially want to be proactively involved, do a speaking, do an interactive live interview sesh, things of that, especially like any mental health or healing or support services. We'll have different breakout rooms in the virtual jazz, so like people can focus on stuff after different speakers and whatnot. So if anybody wants to get involved, this is the time. We're survivors, so we fly by the seat of our pants. We didn't want to tell anybody what was going on until we had secured all of our permits. And like you'd mentioned with the Provo surprise, we don't really need Agape to know exactly what we're doing before we do it. And we're pretty sure the second that we launch everything publicly, I mean, they'll know, but it's okay because we're going to follow all the rules and it'll be fine. But we may need a bail fund. So seriously, go hit up that GoFundMe.
I'll be liberated here, and I'll have to do the fundraising to get you guys out. But
yeah. Yeah, you'll be our call. Can you be that guy? We'll just let you know.
I'm gonna get a call from 45 people. No, that's awesome. Well, no, I'm really excited to see how it plays out. And, like I said, I wish I was able to make it out. It really is something that, when I think Amanda, the first time we talked, you talked about maybe doing something like this in the future. And I think it's really, really cool and needed. And I think that I think it's amazing that so many people are willing to publicly go out and just, because it is, I have to imagine there's some part of a lot of people's mind where they think, well, I'm out, I'm done with it, I just want to keep walking. And, so I think it's really cool that those that are able to say hey, I don't want this happening to anybody else. And especially, the both of you with your platforms that you built with the, Troubled podcast, with Exposing Circle of Hope, the amount of reach and impact that's come from a podcast and a TikTok channel is absolutely crazy. And it's really cool to watch it keep growing and the awareness keep going. And I say that as someone who found out about this from those channels and found out about it from Amanda talking with you and, you breaking down hey, there's not just 3 of these places. There's a lot more to it than this. And so anything we can do to help, anything listeners can do to help, I hope they will. And I hope it's a big success for you guys.
We would really appreciate any Christians that do realize that what we're up against is not true Christianity.
Right.
Because as an atheist, I constantly get attacked because I'm bringing out the stuff that I was raised on. And they're like, oh, that's not real Christianity. And I'm like, no, I'm not telling you it is. I'm saying this is how I was raised. So I do feel like we need more support from the Christian community because I'm not coming after anyone's religion. I'm coming after the people who are using people's religion to harm other people, because the damage they do spiritually I was scared to death to go to bed as a kid. I was petrified, and to be sent away to some place that you don't even know these people and you're being taught these things that are just you're going to go to hell for even having these thoughts. It's abuse. And we're not saying that all Christianity is like that. We're just saying they are using Christianity to abuse kids. And so,
yeah, no, Miranda could tell you from our episode, I got pretty heated about this, but it really is. It's frustrating to me to see so many using the name Christianity to justify stuff. And just there is no, every part of the class system has abuse. Every financial situation there can be abuse. Every family dynamic there can be abuse. And the truth is, every religion there can be abuse. And the reality is that one of the most frustrating things for me to hear is that so many of these homes, specifically Agape and many more, are able to do really whatever they want because of religious exemptions. And the fact that there's a religious exemption for abuse. I was reading an article from 1974 with Lester Roloff, and it was he was complaining that he couldn't feed girls the way that he wanted to. And I'm like, what does that mean? What regulation do you need to get around where you're not able, because I'm pretty sure they weren't telling him to do anything crazy. It was probably 3 meals a day. Don't force feed them. And, don't make them eat expired food. But you've got someone saying we can't operate religiously the way we want to, which was just code for we can't be as physically abusive and mentally abusive as we want to. And it's time to draw, I think for Christians, Christians need to draw a line in the sand and say that doesn't represent, one, be honest and say, instead of just attacking everybody with that's not Christianity, just say, maybe that has been Christianity for a lot of people. And maybe that has been the experience with the church. Because I'm at the point now where I don't even say oh, that's not the church. I'm yeah, that's that's the church as we know it today. That's the church. And that's the reason why I'm so hesitant to affiliate with most of these churches, is because they won't draw that line in the sand and say, hey, we're on the side of the survivor and not the person who put them in a survival situation. But yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And I think that is huge. Like, if you're listening to this and you're a Christian, like you should be leading the charge on this. Like, if you believe what you say you believe, this shouldn't be the, as in most social justice situations where you're 10 years behind the time on it. Like, when there's someone being victimized or a group of people being victimized by someone, you should be the first one there to offer support. But I really appreciate both of you, again, like raising awareness about this, sharing about this. And, like I said, it bothers me. I'm not able to be there, but I'm hoping that there's plenty of awareness raised and that we see a good turnout there. So,
yeah, I hope you'll be super involved virtually. It'll be great.
Yeah, just let me know. I mean, like everything, like this, like anything I can do to help shine some awareness. Like I said, I'm coming at from an outsider. So just point me in the direction I need to shoot and I'll shoot, and we'll kind of go from there. But just let me know how I can help, and I'd love to.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
And just really quick, one more time, just for people that want to connect with either of you, can you just throw out like the best place where someone can connect? I know you mentioned talktroubled.com was a good spot. Is there anywhere else people should look to connect?
Talktroubled.org. Troubled Podcast is available on all platforms, and our social media handle everywhere is @TalkTroubled.
Awesome. And then Amanda?
MyCircleOfTruth @gmail.com is probably the best way, or my Instagram.
Awesome.
So.
Cool. And the Instagram's Exposing Circle of Hope still, right?
Berlin von Mortis, but I think you can find it under Exposing Circle of Hope.
Okay. Perfect. So. Awesome. Yeah, definitely guys, connect with them. I'll put links in the show notes to everything we just talked about. And if you can give a little bit to support this, definitely do so, because every penny is going to help. And I know for a fact that with the two of you behind it, at least, it's going to be well put together and done the right way. So people can know their money's going to a good spot.
Thank you for listening to the Preacher Boys podcast. If you appreciated the content on the show, please leave a review on iTunes. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter with the handle @PreacherBoysDoc. Additional information can always be found on PreacherBoysDoc.com.